Hello everyone, my name is Varun and today we are going to discuss about GitHub Copilot. GitHub Copilot is a very powerful and new AI-based tool that can assist developers with coding tasks by generating suggestions and even entire lines of code. So let's begin with the first question. Can you share an example of particularly challenging coding problem that GitHub Copilot helped you solve? This is a very great question and the foremost question asked to most of the developers using GitHub Copilot. So if I had to answer the question, I would like to tell you that once when I was working on a JavaScript backend project that involved configuring a database for an application, GitHub Copilot proved to be an incredibly helpful tool. With just a few keystrokes to start a line of code, Copilot was able to generate the boilerplate code and suggestions that helped me save a significant amount of time and effort. Thanks to Copilot that I was able to complete the task in much shorter amount of time than I had really anticipated, and I felt more confident and productive in my work. Instead of spending hours poring over documentation and trying to figure out the syntax for certain functions and commands, I could simply rely on Copilot to generate the code that I needed. This not only helped me to increase my productivity and focus, but also allowed me to spend more time on the higher level aspects of the project, such as designing the database schema and thinking through the overall architecture of the application. Of course, there were simple, small errors and bugs that I had to address, but overall, I found Copilot was a very valuable tool that helped me to complete my project more quickly and efficiently than I would had been able to do on my own without the help of Copilot. The another example I would like to give was that we were once working on a Python project in a team, and that project required us to manipulate large data sets of Python, and we needed to perform a complex operation that involves grouping the data by multiple criteria and then performing some calculations on each group. We were not really very sure where to start with, and we did have to spend hours and hours of time reading through the documentation and experimenting with a different approach. In this case, we used GitHub Copilot to assist us. As we started writing the code, GitHub Copilot used to provide suggestions for the syntax and structure of the code. Based on its analysis of the large dataset of public code repositories, it also suggested a built-in library of Python that we were not previously aware of. And it really simplified our task. It also suggested code snippets that performed similar operation that we adapted to our specific use case. By using GitHub Copilot, we were able to save time and avoid frustration by getting quickly the working solutions. Now, let's talk about the another question. The another question is, what do you see as the potential drawbacks or limitations of the relying GitHub Copilot for the coding task? This is again a very fantastic question. Like everything has its own pros and cons. So now let's understand the cons of GitHub Copilot. First of all, I would like to highlight that over reliance on GitHub Copilot could lead to decrease in creativity and critical thinking. If developers rely too heavily on the tool for generating code, they may miss opportunities to come up with more creative solutions or to approach a problem from a different angle. GitHub Copilot may not always generate a code that is really very optimized or efficient. While it may be useful tool for getting started on a task, but developers will still need to carefully review and refine the code to ensure that it meets the performance and efficiency requirements. The third and a really important point which I would like to say is intellectual property concerns could arise if GitHub Copilot generates a code that is too similar to the existing code or infringes on someone else's intellectual property. This could lead to legal issues and other complications. GitHub Copilot's training is based on the public code repositories, which means that it may not always be up to date or accurate as per the industry standards. In some cases, the suggested code may be outdated, deprecated because of the versioning issues, or otherwise it might be unsuitable for the particular use case. It might be a really generalized solution. The suggestions generated by GitHub Copilot may not always be safe or secure. For example, it may suggest a code that contains security vulnerabilities or that could be used to exploit a system. So we really need a very robust testing of the code generated through GitHub Copilot, and it might not be directly ready for the production environment. The last point which I would like to highlight is bias. Like all other machine learning and artificial intelligence tools, GitHub Copilot may be subject to bias, both in data it is trained on and in the suggestion it generates. Developers should be aware of the potential for bias and work to validate any code generated by the tool to ensure that it is fair and unbiased. Now, let's come to the very important question. It is, what are some of the tips for the new users who are going to use GitHub Copilot? So, first of all, I would like to advise the new users to go and learn the keyboard shortcuts. Now, this might sound really very simple, but GitHub Copilot has several keyboard shortcuts that can help you work more efficiently. Take some time to learn these shortcuts and they can save you a lot of time in the long run. Trust me, just go and have a look on the keyboard shortcuts. Provide clear context. When using a GitHub Copilot, it is important to provide a clear context for the code you want to generate. This will help the tool provide more accurate and relevant suggestions. Be sure to include comments, create functions and variable names, and any other information that can help provide context for the code, because it will help better to understand the code from the artificial intelligence perspective. Next, please do review the suggestions. While GitHub Copilot can be a valuable tool for generating code, it's important to review the suggestions carefully to ensure that they are correct and meet your exact needs. Don't blindly accept the suggestions without understanding whether they are a great fit for your code base or not. Another thing which I would like to tell is use it as a learning tool. GitHub Copilot can be a great tool for learning new coding technique and best practices. Take out your time, spend some time to explore the suggestions and try to understand how they really work. This can help you improve a better coder and improve your overall skill set. Be aware of the potential security issues. This is really very critical point from the development perspective. GitHub Copilot generates code based on the patterns and trends in existing code repositories. While this can be a powerful tool, it's important to be aware of the potential security issues that may arise from using it. Always review the code carefully and ensure that it meets your security standards. At last, I would like to conclude by saying, overall, while GitHub Copilot is a really very powerful tool for assisting the coding task, it is important for developers to understand the potential privacy and security implications of using the tool. Developers should carefully review and validate any code generated by the tool and take steps to ensure that their code and intellectual property is protected. Thank you very much. I hope this was helpful.